There are days when your mind feels like a sky full of birds, each one flying in a different direction. You try to follow them, figure out where they're going, and end up lost in the air. Thinking starts to feel like a survival instinct, like if you stop, something bad might happen. But silence isn't empty. It's the space where everything rests. Just like a lake mirrors the sky when the water stops moving, the mind reflects truth when it stops trying so hard to understand. Ever notice how a thought sometimes feels like wind blowing through an open window? It comes in, stirs the curtains, and then moves on. But we try to catch it, analyze it, hold on to it, and in doing that, we create the very noise we're desperate to quiet down. It's a subtle loop. The more we try to stop thinking, the more we feed the thought of trying. It's like wanting to fall asleep but staying awake, trying to fall asleep. The effort becomes the obstacle. The real issue isn't the thinking itself, it's how tightly we cling to it, left alone. The mind is like a river that knows exactly where to go, but when we try to control its flow, it gets rough, restless, confused. Overthinking is like swimming against the current. Stopping the mind isn't about forcing it to stop, it's about floating, letting the river carry you without resistance. Maybe you've felt like your thoughts never take a break, that there's always something to fix, something to figure out. That constant chase for clarity is what actually creates the fog that hides the present moment. What the Tao teaches us is that clarity doesn't come from analyzing, it comes from stillness. Wisdom isn't built through effort, it's revealed through surrender. Lao Tzu said, "He who fills his mind with thoughts loses touch with what is real. He who remains empty is in harmony with heaven and earth." That emptiness isn't absence, it's pure presence. The natural state before thought shows up. When you stop trying to understand life and simply feel it, the noise starts to fade away. The mind's a beautiful tool, but it's not a home. It's meant for creating paths, not for resting in them. When you try to live inside your head, you lose sight of the horizon. But when you remember you can step out, breathe, and just be, you realize thought isn't your enemy. It's just the echo of something greater that's always been silent underneath it all. So today, I invite you to walk with me through this space of return, a path where thinking turns into seeing, where noise turns into sound, and sound turns into silence. There's nothing to chase, nothing to conquer, only something to remember. You're not the restless river, you're the sky watching it flow. Lao Tzu said, "An agitated mind is like muddy water if you let it rest. It becomes clear." That's one of the simplest yet deepest lessons of the Tao. Calm doesn't come from effort, it comes from resting within the movement itself. The human mind is part of nature, but we've forgotten that. We spend our days trying to master thought, like trying to hold the wind in our hands. And the tighter we grip, the faster it slips away. The Tao isn't about control, it's about understanding the natural rhythm of things. Water doesn't force its way forward. It just follows the land flowing around what's in front of it. Even when it hits rocks, it learns from them. The bumps and edges become part of its own sound. The mind works the same way. When you stop fighting your thoughts, you start hearing them. And when you really listen, you realize they were never the enemy, just messengers, trying to tell you something you haven't fully welcomed yet. Most of our overthinking comes from resistance, trying to understand what we're meant to simply feel, trying to fix what time is already healing, trying to rush what's still blooming. But the Tao reminds us, nothing blooms before its time. If you try to force a seed open, you destroy the sprout. If you try to force your mind to stop, you stir up even more chaos. The wisdom of Wu Wei, the art of non-forcing, is how the Tao moves. Quiet, yet alive. Gentle, yet unstoppable. Thought itself is natural. It rises and fades like waves on the ocean. The problem begins when we forget we're the ocean and start thinking we're the waves. That's when anxiety sneaks in, the belief that we need to control every tide, every ripple. But truth is, we've always been part of the water. The Tao doesn't ask us to silence the waves. It just reminds us that underneath it all, there's a still depth that never moves. When Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching, he described the wise person as someone who observes without clinging, acts without forcing, and trusts without knowing. That doesn't mean being passive. It means being in harmony. Your mind doesn't have to be a battlefield. It can be a garden. Thoughts grow, bloom, and fall away, and that's okay. The beauty of the Tao is in embracing the full cycle, birth and end, sound and silence, light and shadow. That urge to stop thinking is really just another attempt to control what's natural. But thinking is life expressing itself. What the Tao teaches is a simple shift. Instead of fighting your thoughts, just look at them. See them for what they are, like wind brushing through the trees. The wind passes, the tree stays. You're the tree. Your awareness is the stillness that remains while everything else moves through. So here's the invitation for today. Let the river be a river again. Don't fight the current. Don't try to hold the water. Don't get lost in the waves. Just watch and let it flow. When left alone, the mind naturally clears, like muddy water settling when the hand stops stirring it. In the next steps, we'll walk together through 3 simple, quiet practices the Tao offers to help us find that natural stillness. First, awareness and acceptance, learning to see thought without becoming it. Second, Wu Wei, the art of effortless action, of doing that flows from being. And finally, the balance of yin and yang, where we discover that silence and movement, thinking and not thinking, are just 2 sides of the same flow. So instead of trying to shut your mind up, you start learning to listen softly, without pressure. And in that gentle listening, the noise slowly fades into silence, the same silence where the Tao has always lived. The first step to finding peace in your mind is just noticing what's going on in there without trying to change a thing. The mind thinks that's what it does, just like the wind blows and the rain falls. But suffering shows up the moment you try to control what's natural. When you believe you need to quiet the wind just to find calm, awareness goes into tiki, effort it just watches. When you learn to see your thoughts without chasing them, something inside you opens up like a sky slowly clearing after a storm. Acceptance isn't giving up, it's wisdom. It's realizing that everything that shows up has its place in the flow of life, even your thoughts. When you sit still and just watch your mind, you start to notice thoughts come and go, like leaves floating down a stream. Some are light, some are heavy, but none of them stay forever. They pass, and the less you try to grab onto them, the faster they fade. There's a stillness behind all that mental movement, a quiet space that never changes, even when your thoughts are crashing around like waves. That stillness is who you really are. You're not your thoughts, you're the one watching them. That simple shift in perspective is the beginning of freedom. The mind can keep doing its thing, but you don't get caught up in the noise anymore. And when you stop identifying with it, the noise naturally starts to fade. Awareness is like the riverbank. The river flows, but the bank stays still. When you see yourself as the bank, the current doesn't sweep you away. The thoughts can keep moving, but you're no longer being carried off by them. There's a space between every thought's arrival and its disappearance, and that space is silent. That's where the Tao shows up, subtle, steady, always there. Accepting what shows up means stopping the fight with reality. It's realizing that nothing needs to be pushed or fixed. Even the chaos of the mind has its place in the balance of everything. What we call confusion is just movement. What we call clarity is that same movement at rest. When you stop choosing sides, the division fades, and thinking stops feeling like an enemy. Picture water running into a rock. It doesn't stop. It doesn't argue. It doesn't try to move the rock. It just flows around it, smooth, patient, and sure. A wise mind does the same. It notices the thoughts, acknowledges them, but doesn't cling to them. Acceptance is that kind of flexibility, the ease that lets you keep flowing even when the current gets rough. When we resist what we think, we create friction, and that friction turns into pain. But when we just see without trying to change, what once felt heavy starts to feel light. To observe is to dissolve. The simple act of awareness is already a kind of healing because the light of consciousness shows that nothing really needs fixing. The Tao reminds us that whatever you look at with calm eventually finds its own balance. Just like muddy water clears up when you stop stirring it, the mind settles down when you stop messing with it. You don't need to go chasing silence. You just need to stop disturbing it. Practicing awareness and acceptance is really about coming home. It's a return to that quiet space that's always been there, even when it felt lost. Every time you remember to just watch, you're already back. Every mindful breath is a bridge between the noise and the stillness. And little by little, you start to realize the mind was never a maze. It was just a river that needed space to flow. There comes a moment when even while you're watching your mind, it still wants to step in. It wants to help, to figure things out, to do quietness. But that very urge to manage stillness is what stirs the noise again. The Tao calls this Wu Wei the art of not forcing. Wu Wei isn't laziness. It's action in sync with the flow. It's when movement just happens on its own. No strain, no pushing, no trying to control how life unfolds. Present is the soil where Wu Wei grows. When you're truly here, there's no rush to change anything. You move when movement shows up naturally, and you rest when it fades away. Like bamboo bending with the wind and then returning to center when it passes, the mind learns to move softly between impulse and stillness. Being present doesn't mean stopping the world, it means noticing it's already in motion. When you tune into that flow, doing becomes light and thinking becomes clear. That's when thought stops being a problem and turns into just another way life expresses itself through you. Ideas come and go, and you stop trying to control them. They just happen, and you watch like the wind watching its own breeze. Wu Wei is living without swimming upstream. It's acting so naturally that there's no gap between wanting and doing. The moment you quit trying to stop thinking, the mind finds its own rhythm. Thoughts lose their weight and turn into soft breezes drifting through awareness. Presence is quiet, but it's alive. It's like the surface of a lake, reflecting everything, holding on to nothing. When you're fully present, there's no fight with what's happening, just a calm recognition. It's like this right now. And that simple awareness is already transformation. Life finds its balance the second you stop trying to push the river. Wu Wei is the heartbeat of the Tao. It teaches that every attempt to control the flow is just resistance in disguise. Water doesn't try to be water. The wind doesn't need lessons to blow. Everything already knows how to be what it is because everything moves with the same rhythm. Even thought, no matter how noisy, belongs to that rhythm. It only becomes a problem when we start trying to tame it. When you live in presence, thoughts come and go as naturally as breathing. Action doesn't come from trying. It comes from clarity. You don't think before acting. Action just flows from awareness itself. It's like walking through an open field. Each step happens on its own, guided by the feel of the ground beneath your feet. Letting yourself live in Wu Wei means dropping the idea that you need to control everything for life to work. Life's already working with or without your effort. The Tao is that quiet current holding the whole universe together, even when you don't notice it. When people try to set a pace for something infinite, they burn out. But when they surrender to that infinite rhythm, they finally rest. Being present is the same as trusting. It's letting life move through you without resistance. And funny enough, it's in this non-doing that real action happens. The artist doesn't force inspiration, they just make room for it to show up. The wise don't chase answers. They stay still until the answer reveals itself. The mind works the same way. Silence doesn't need to be built. It rises on its own when effort stops. Stillness isn't the result of a method. It's a return to the simplicity of being. Wu Wei teaches us that thought quiets down when it's no longer pressured to stop. The river flows again once the dam is lifted. To be present is to be part of what's happening without trying to be more than that. It's moving with the world, not against it. And once you realize life is already doing its thing, that the Tao is guiding every breath, thinking loses its weight. And being becomes light, like the wind blowing without knowing where it came from or where it's headed, yet somehow always on the right path. Inside the mind, just like in nature, everything moves in cycles. There are moments of calm and moments of chaos, hours of light and hours of dark. The Tao teaches that harmony isn't about killing off one side, it's about letting both exist. Yin and Yang are just two moves of the same breath. Where there's silence, there's also sound. Where there's rest, there's energy. Where there's thought, there's space holding it. Fighting against any of these is what throws everything off balance. Yin is the quiet side, receptive, peaceful, the rest of the mind. It's the night, the womb, the space of none. Yang is the spark, the motion, the bright force that creates and moves. The human mind gets tangled because it worships Yang, always doing, thinking, analyzing, and forgets the wisdom of Yin, which is simply being. That's where overthinking is born, from the imbalance between movement and stillness. But when you start welcoming both, without trying to pick sides, something shifts. Thought stops being the enemy, and silence stops being the goal. They turn into one rhythm, one dance. It's like the ocean's tides. It doesn't resist the coming or going of the waves, because it knows both are just parts of its wholeness. Yin and Yang complete each other, and in that balance, the mind finally rests. Harmony isn't the absence of movement, it's being in sync. When a thought shows up, that's Yang doing its thing. When silence settles back in, that's Yin taking a breather. And your awareness, you're the ocean holding both. The mistake is trying to live on just one side, wanting day without night, sound without pause, thought without space. A mind that understands the Tao gets that peace isn't in stillness, it's in rhythm. Lao Tzu once said, sound is born from what is, but it becomes music through what is not. That's how the mind works. To thought is the sound. Silence is the space between the notes. One needs the other for the song of life to play. Balance isn't something you force. It happens the moment you start allowing yin and yang aren't fighting, they're dancing. In real life, that means letting your mind think when it needs to think and rest when it wants quiet. No pressure, no judgment, no forcing the flow. When thoughts come, see them as yang moving through you. When silence returns, recognize yin wrapping you up in calm. Balance is just that natural back and forth, the breath of awareness that never stops pulsing. Sometimes yin takes the lead and life calls you inward. Other times yang wakes up and your mind wants to create, learn, take action. The problem shows up when we try to stay stuck on one side. Thinking peace means never changing. Real peace is constant movement, a dance with no fixed center, where everything shifts and somehow everything's still okay. When the mind learns to honor both sides, it starts to breathe again. Thinking becomes lighter. Silence feels more alive. There's no struggle, just rhythm. Like bamboo bending with the wind but never breaking. An awakened being flows between doing and resting, thinking in stillness without losing balance. Even usually to stop thinking, that's still yang, trying to do something about it. The moment you notice and accept it, yin naturally rises to balance things out. You don't have to choose. Life's already balancing it all for you. The Tao doesn't need your help, it just asks you to trust its flow. When yin and yang start dancing together inside you, thought finds its place. Silence becomes alive, and the mind stops being a battlefield. It turns into sacred space. There's no more split between the thinker and the watcher, just one seamless flow of consciousness. Sometimes sound, sometimes silence, one song played by two invisible instruments. And that's the moment when thinking stops feeling heavy. It becomes part of your breathing, part of life itself. You no longer need to stop thinking because thought is turned into presence. Yin and yang merge into one movement, and all that's left is the quiet, endless Tao, wide and whole, like the sky that holds both day and night without taking sides. Maybe now you're starting to see it was never really about stopping your thoughts. What needed to happen was a return to awareness, to the quiet that holds everything, to that stilled space inside that never moves. Even when your mind feels like it's running a marathon, your thoughts were never the enemy. They were just messengers talking too loud because no one had ever really listened. But once you started watching them with a little patience, they finally relaxed. And in that stillness, what used to be noise turned into soft music, the background hum of something deeper and more peaceful. The river that once fought against the rocks now just flows. It doesn't care about the obstacles anymore, because it gets that the rocks are part of the journey too. The mind's the same way. It learns that thoughts aren't mistakes. They're just how the universe breathes through you. What used to be effort is now rhythm. What used to be searching is now presence. The Tao's wisdom moves in circles, like the turning of the seasons. The winter of silence gives way to the spring of thought, and both are sacred in their own way. The wise one doesn't pick sides. They know unity shows up in the dance between both. So when the mind gets quiet, you rest. When it moves again, you watch. There's no more resistance, just an understanding that it's all part of the same flow. The human mind was made to think, but the awareness behind it, that was made to be. And when those two meet, real harmony is born. Thinking flows without pressure. Silence rests without trying to escape. You don't need to hide from what you feel or wrestle with what you think. You just show up fully right here in the moment where thought and no thought blend together like wind in the space it moves through. The Tao is where everything makes peace again. It's that moment when the mind, tired of trying to figure things out, just gives in to the vastness of what is. There's no longer me and my thoughts. There's just the flow, the breath of life moving through you. The same breath that stirs the autumn leaves carries the river downstream and quietly wakes the dawn. When you become part of that breath, time slows down. Every inhale turns into meditation. Every sound reminds you of the silence underneath it. Life itself starts to feel like an invitation to Wu Wei, to live without pushing, to act without forcing, to think without getting lost. In that space, thought turns into pure awareness, and the mind becomes a mirror for the Tao. Now, take a second to look inward. Notice the thoughts that are still drifting by. They're softer now, aren't they? Like distant echoes, gentle breezes brushing across the surface of your being. You don't have to push them away or chase after them. Just notice how, even as they pass, something inside you stays still, vast, calm, untouched. That something has always been there. The silent essence that sees it all and never changes. And when a thought comes back, because it will smile at it, Greet it like an old wave rolling in from the sea. It'll rise, touch the shore, and fall back into the ocean. Nothing to fear, nothing to control. Thinking is part of the Tao, too, just another way for silence to express itself. The rivers finally met the ocean, the winds found its space again, and you've found yourself. Not as the one who overthinks, but as the one who simply asterisk. Is that asterisk, take a breath. Let the air move in and out without rushing. Feel your body settle into this very moment. There's peace here, the kind that comes from forcing your mind to shut up, but from remembering the one who's watching it all. Let that memory stay with you through the noisy days and the quiet nights. Let it guide you back whenever your thoughts start to spin out. And may you share that calm with the world, not through words, but through presence. Because the real answer to how do I stop overthinking isn't about shutting your mind down. It's about the natural silence that appears when you return to being part of the flow. Everything's already in sync. You don't need to asterisk anything, just notice. The Tao has been breathing through you all along. And when you try to quiet your mind, what hits you the most? Drop it in the comments so you never know who you might help by sharing.